Bobby Bare was once a household name in American country music. He stood in the Billboard Top 10, sold millions of records, and was revered as one of the greatest narrative voices in the genre. His life, however, was not without its struggles. Born into poverty, Bobby faced hardships from an early age. Yet, through perseverance and a deep love for music, he made his way into the spotlight. But fame came at a high cost. Behind his success was a tale of betrayal, loss, and emotional scars that he would carry for the rest of his life. Music was both his refuge and his prison. And despite the recognition, Bobby's personal life was left in ruins. As Nashville's music scene evolved, Bobby found himself quietly forgotten by the very industry that once celebrated him. A childhood shaped by hardship. Bobby Bare was born in Iron, Ohio in 1935 during the Great Depression, a time when poverty wasn't just a word, it was a daily battle for survival. In the small town along the Ohio River, meals were scarce, often reduced to stale bread and lard, and winter nights meant fighting for warmth in rough potato sacks. These were the harsh realities that shaped Bobby's early years. His mother, who fought to keep the family together, tragically died when Bobby was just 5 years old, leaving a gaping hole in his life. His father, overwhelmed by despair, could not raise the children on his own, and the family was torn apart. From that point on, Bobby learned an invaluable lesson. Never expect anyone to stay. This early abandonment marked him deeply, a wound that would never fully heal. The cost of survival. By the time Bobby was a teenager, his childhood had already been defined by hardship. He worked long hours in the fields, doing back-breaking labor that even grown men struggled with. He hauled stones, dug ditches, and did whatever work he could find to earn a few coins. His small hands were calloused from the relentless work, and his back was already bent under the weight of life. Amid the struggles, Bobby grew familiar with loneliness, a constant companion in a world where survival was the primary concern. Dreams seemed like luxuries, far from reach. But then a miracle of sorts happened. Bobby found an old radio, and from that small box, the voices of Hank Williams and Red Foley filled his soul. Music became his refuge, his only escape from the harshness of his reality. The first taste of love and loss, music wasn't just a hobby for Bobby, it became his lifeblood. As he learned to play guitar, the rough, calloused fingers of his youth fumbled over the strings, each note an act of defiance against his painful past. But music wasn't the only thing that offered him solace. At 18, Bobby met Linda, a girl with blonde hair and a smile that made him forget the pain of his childhood. For the first time, Bobby felt truly loved and dreamed of a future together. But as fate had often done before, it cruelly took Linda away. In a sudden car accident, Linda died instantly, leaving Bobby once again in the grip of devastating loss. Sitting at her funeral, he didn't cry aloud. Instead, he quietly strummed his guitar, and from that moment, his first song was born. Not for fame, but as a way to survive his grief. Finding his voice in the pain. Bobby's first song wasn't written for an audience, it was written for himself. It was his way of dealing with the cruel hand fate had dealt him. He didn't sing about love, he sang about loss, about how life kept taking and never giving back. His songs were born out of survival, and from that moment, Bobby's mournful ballad style began to take shape. He dropped out of school not because he wanted to, but because he couldn't afford tuition, and his heart was no longer in it. While his peers worried about exams and dances, Bobby was focused on where his next meal would come from and where he would sleep. He learned early that life doesn't always offer a fairy tale ending, but it doesn't stop you from pushing forward. The struggle for artistic identity. Back in Nashville, Bobby learned a tough lesson: success does not guarantee protection. He began to understand that no matter how great his art was, the industry would still see him as disposable. Record labels rejected him again and again, claiming that his music wasn't marketable, that his style didn't fit into the neat boxes they wanted to sell. Bobby stopped trying to please anyone. He wrote songs with a quiet bitterness, blending country, folk, and rockabilly into music that defied easy categorization. His lyrics reflected the struggles he had faced, the pain of being overlooked, and the toll that his honest, raw music had taken on him. But the labels weren't interested in a rebellious Bobby Bare. He was too much of an outlier, too unwilling to conform. Despite the setbacks, he refused to compromise his art. A breakthrough with Chad Atkins. Then, in 1962, Bobby's fortunes changed when he crossed paths with producer Chet Atkins. Unlike the record labels, Atkins saw Bobby for what he truly was, a storyteller. Bobby's voice wasn't perfect in the conventional sense, but it held something far rarer: truth. With Atkins' support, Bobby signed with RCA, and his career took a new turn. In 1963, Bobby released Detroit City, a song that captured the struggles of the working class and became an anthem for many Americans. It was a hit, and Bobby finally received the recognition he had long deserved. Detroit City won a Grammy in 1964, and Bobby Bare was on top. But even with the fame, there was still a sense of emptiness. When Bobby received his Grammy, he sat alone in a hotel room, holding the golden statue, realizing there was no one to share the moment with. The victory was bittersweet, a reminder that no amount of success could fill the void left by his past. The price of truth. Bobby Bare's life is a testament to the price of honesty and authenticity in a world that often values image over substance. He spent decades telling the painful stories of others, but in doing so, he left his own life in ruins. His music resonated with millions, but at times it felt like a double-edged sword, providing catharsis for his audience while reinforcing the isolation he felt in his own life. Bobby's voice, shaped by years of loss and betrayal, will forever be remembered for its quiet power and raw emotion. But the question remains, is this the cost of being an artist in a world that doesn't always appreciate the truth? Bobby Bare's story is a painful reminder that sometimes the price of honesty is too high, even for the greatest of artists.